everybody. Welcome to Drink Up this Saturday morning for those that you were wanting to join us either early or late, depending where you're at on planet Earth. I see that my friend Peter is out there. Peter, you have the login. If you want to come in, you're always welcome, brother. But thank you for joining. Welcome, Andy Poe from Tastemakers. Andy, welcome. And Adam, great
Thank
to
you.
have you back. I know you were on a little vacay the last couple weeks. Before I get started, I just have to call out our first sponsor, Adam. Can you know who that is?
Should I guess? Is it Jay? Is it Jay and Freebird?
Freebird, Jay Williams. I don't know if Jay's even listening, but he sent this nice shirt, so I felt compelled to talk about Freebird. And Andy, you're going to probably want to meet Jay Williams at some point. This item is it's water that plays in that space in a can, and he's
Mhm.
absolutely a wonderful person, the whole bit. So just calling out to my friend Jay Williams and the company Freebird. Thanks for our first sponsorship at Drink Up. With that being said, Andy, welcome to Drink Up. Thanks for getting up early this morning. You're out from California, I believe.
That's right, Los Angeles. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So what is Tastemakers? Are you going out there and tasting people and stuff? Are you creating beverages? What is exactly is Tastemakers?
So Tastemakers Research Group is an agile consumer product testing company. So we specialize in taste tests, mostly for CPG food and beverage companies. So that's anything out of the box, out of the bottle, out of the bag. We can test that with our intercept model, where we go to the consumer versus current methods where you have the consumer. You have to call it in consumers one at a time or participants one at a time, and it takes a long time and it's much more expensive than what we've developed.
Interesting. You say on your website, consumer product tasting or testing, not tasting, testing reinvented. What does that mean?
Yes, sir. So what that means is that current methods, well, there haven't really been any person to person research innovations and market research probably since the mall intercept of the 80s, right? And people don't shop at malls anymore. So it made sense in the 80s and 90s to go to malls where the town square was and talk to people and ask them questions and maybe, bring them in a room and have them taste some things. But retail has changed, like I said. And so what we do is we go to locations where we're going to get high foot traffic and a high concentration of your target demographics. So say, for example, one of our testing locations is a park here in Los Angeles. It's very popular. It's a tourist attraction. You can see the Hollywood sign, so it's very Instagrammable. So we set up right on the trail there with computers, with a full, refrigeration and prep setup, and we screen people right there on the trail. And if they qualified, then we'll put them at a Chromebook
So
or
wait a minute. I'm
computer.
I'm I'm out there walking out in the wild and stuff, and
That's
then
right.
you show up. Hey, you got a second? Like, what's the approach there? I mean, I'm trying to like be
Well,
peaceful here, and
we're
then
already
Andy's running
there.
up to me.
So we're already there, and our presence is fairly well known. But yes, usually if this isn't a sales pitch because we're not trying to sell anything. We're trying to do a market research study. So if you don't want to participate, or if you don't like what we're testing, we certainly do not want you to participate. However, it's usually about a 6 to 8 minute survey, and you get a $5 digital reward card immediately after you're finished. So, if you have an extra 5 minutes and you're just, you're leisurely, you're out on the trail, you're doing a little bit of people watching, you're seeing the occasional celebrity out there, uh, then, hop on by.
Do you intercept celebrities? You got to. Well, first of all, let's step back. We'll get back to the intercept of celebrities because I'm sure there's a story there. So, how did you get into this journey? Tell a little bit about yourself and your journey and how we got where we're at with.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Well, I have an agency background. I started working with advertising agencies after I finished my MBA, late 90s, early 2000s. but then at the same time, I was living in San Diego. I got my MBA at Michigan State University. So my options were GM, Ford, and Chrysler at the time, and working in Detroit. But I just kind of felt like the West was calling me. I came out to California, I moved to San Diego and got a job with an agency, Lambesis Agency, which is a great boutique agency. They did sort of the Airwalk uh, commercials with Tony Hawk back in the day. They do Sky Vodka and that kind of thing. Really excellent clients and work that they do. But at the same time, the .com was rolling out, and I happened to get a job with the MP3.com, one of the bigger .coms at the time, which was in San Diego. So I was the research point person there, did a lot of user testing. I do remember going to the beach in San Diego with a couple of poster boards. We were testing out lo-fi versus hi-fi in terms of, how you wanted to download your MP3. So that was
This
again
is during
another.
American Alliance, during the AOL days or something, probably.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. We're going to date ourselves, Andy. Sorry.
That's what I was doing at the time. So, just really kind of just going out and getting from the source what, people felt and thought and understood or didn't understand about that technology.
Interesting. You got into that. So from there, where did you go?
So after I was there, that company got sued by all major record labels, and they disappeared them
Oh, so you were kind of like, what am
eventually.
I going to do now? Interesting. Oh, is it Napster?
No, it's not in Napster. I think it's just the website. It always was just the website and
Okay.
the URL. So anyway, that's another
So
conversation.
you were without a role. You had to go find your next opportunity.
My next opportunity was also in San Diego with the codec called DivX. So, I had experience with MP3, a codec, and now we're doing DivX. So I was their research point person. But, then the bubble was starting to burst and I moved to Los Angeles and I initially got work with, I believe I guess it was again, a digital market research agency called Streetwise Concepts and Cultures. Streetwise isn't around anymore, but they're basically an arm of Velvet Hammer, which is a music label. They have, Deftones, Alien Ant Farm,
Peter and
System of
Jeff
the
are
Down.
on the line right now, and they're geeking out. At some point, they're going to have some music questions. They're going to probably ask you about have you like dealt with David Bowie or something. But all right, so keep on going on this digital journey we're on right now.
Right, right. So, and it makes sense because, music's one of those things that really, you know, that whole viral phenomena that you want happens really naturally sometimes with music. So we took that, with sort of the fan base of, Deftones and System of the Down, and we were, applying it to a lot of, movies that were coming out, trying to build buzz about these movies that were coming out, or, music and even video games that were coming out. So it was,
Interesting.
this is like kind of mid 2000s. Uh,
So did
so
you get into the CPG space for a while too? Did you transition out of that into like, or you just work with
not
those brands?
Not really, because then I kind of went on to do more movie, music, and video game research just online. So, kind of what I was telling you, how did I get into Tastemakers? That's when I was working with a CMO, and for a kids brand that was for nutritional supplements and products. So, like I've done with other oddball projects before, I was going to soccer games on the weekends and testing these products with kids and their parents. So that
You're
was,
you're walking around with a clipboard asking questions.
it's an actual taste test, right? So
Okay.
there's a lot of things that are involved with that in terms of setup and people. It's not just walking around, right? So you have tables, you have computers, you have refrigeration right there on site. So electric coolers, PS, are awesome for
Wow,
what we do.
that's really interesting. It's Peter's actually saying, actually, I've learned how to do this now. But anyway, Peter says, "Love it, Andy. Let's connect." So you're going to definitely want to talk to our friends there, and I can make those connections. Adam, you've been sitting there thinking a little bit, so why don't you come into this conversation?
Yeah, no, I'm curious from a and this is probably a little bit further down the rabbit hole than we're at right now. But I'm curious, Andy, from like a Psych 101 perspective, right? How do you how do you make sure to capture the fact that maybe people are giving a more positive review than they might otherwise because they're trying things for free or for a gift card on a beautiful, sidewalk or trail in California as opposed to having to take money out of their pocket and pay for it in the store. You know what I mean?
So, yes, that's a great question. And I have a few different answers for that. First of all, especially in Los Angeles, especially the participants that we recruit for our studies, they know their consumers. We treat them. They know that their opinion has value. We treat them with respect, and we don't treat them like, they don't know what we're doing, because they know what we're doing. So I think that that happens more when you have someone standing, like when you recruit people into a facility, that's formal. Right. So that's really formal. It's kind of sterile, and you have to wait in the lobby, and you have to like sign a lot of things. We're not the clipboard people, right? We're not the
Sorry, I
clipboard
use the
people.
clipboard. Sorry, but good.
So, if you're on a trail and you're walking by, you might say, what's going on? And say, we're doing a taste test for this protein beverage. We have a couple questions if you're interested in participating before we can qualify you. And you get a $5 gift card once you finish your 5-minute survey, basically.
I love it. It's just like the post I did a couple of days ago. I ran into these two girls. I think maybe I told you this about the lemonade stand. I literally was walking around and I drove by them and said, "No, I'm not interested." Then I had my dog later on in the afternoon. I was walking towards them. I put my headphones in to try to avoid them. And what they did is they pulled this little baggie out and they pulled a little bone out. And it was the dog bone. And the gift card is your dog bone, right? And so
Right.
I'm like, "Well, how much?" They're like, "It's free." And then after they gave me the dog bone, I was complied to do business with them. So I believe, is that how it works? It's like, "Hey, I get $5. Sure, I'll give you my time."
Right. Well, that's the other thing, we have dog water bowls, we have dog treats because, tons of dogs there. We also have, coloring books for the kids, because if we can get the kids, then we can get the parents. So, it's just enjoyable. It's not your basic, sterile, formal market research. My staff is super friendly and helpful and professional. And, there's a degree of anonymity there, unlike, again, walking into a facility, because it's mostly self-administered. It's an online survey. And again, most participants that we recruit have taken, they know how to take an online survey. So basically, we walk them through, we just make sure that we serve them their sample once they've rescreened themselves, and then we walk them through the first set of questions. And then if they have any other questions, they can raise their hand.
Cool. I want to,
Yeah, well,
So we're the
I got some questions coming in, Adam. Let me just screen
yeah, yeah.
these.
No, you're fine. I was going to do the same thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a comment out of here. I have a friend that freelances at grocery stores. He is hired by brands to give out samples. That's from Mason. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but Mason was making a statement. Do you work with people like that?
so so that's a good question. A lot We don't fit in a Sam's Club, right? That's not what we do. What we, we're basically doing a survey, and we're collecting data. So you're basically sort of just sampling your survey, and you're taking or sorry, sampling your product and taking the online survey. So, our ideal setup is about 4 10 by 10s at least. So we have at least two, because we want to have at least 9, because we're high volume, and that's why we become affordable. We have about 8 to 10 testing stations with computers for, serving samples and having participants take those surveys. So if we have 8 to 10, then, we're getting the turnover. So, we like to get maybe 100 per day, which is a lot more, again, than what you can get with other methods in that amount of time.
Interesting.
So yeah,
I got another question coming in. I don't know if you want to take this one. I'll let you. I'm gonna put it on the screen. It's from Jeff.
Yeah, I got it.
So here we go.
Go ahead. So basically, Jeff's question was, come on, there we go. So many damn tabs. Uh, do you think the research results would be different if the testing is done on the coast versus people in the middle of the U.S.?
that's a great question. A lot of the products that we test, or a lot of our clients, are BFY or better for you types of products. So yeah, it's the BFYs, you know, um, clean labels, low sugar, organic, these kinds of things. And in my opinion, Los Angeles is still the health and fitness capital of the world. So that is who you want to talk to. Now, we have done different, we also do different markets. And it is customary in research to do, one or two markets. So if we do another market, when we have done that, we have not seen significant differences just because we're recruiting by people that use that type of product versus where they live. So
Interesting.
there can be slight differences, but nothing that I've seen that's been significant. Now, let's say if we did grits or something like that. Okay, we did that in Los Angeles versus.
Rome, Georgia, where I grew up.
Exactly. There's going to be some differences, and it would make sense to only, to test people. But that goes along with, you know, do, do you purchase grits? When was the last time you had grits? So they would all be screened out anyway from the beginning.
That's really interesting. Peter talks about Disney here. I'll screen this too. It's he was agreeing with you earlier I believe when you go to the kids'
Yeah.
soccer games. And then I can kind of turn this into a question too. So if you can convert the kids and get feedback from the kids, is that what you're trying to do? Like if the kids like it, I can get mom and dad consuming it too or purchasing it.
Not necessarily. Again, we're not selling anything. This is not promotion. This isn't sponsored. This is all
Okay.
branded Tastemakers Research Group, right? So it's not branded as our clients because, we, are the
So I don't
third
know
party.
it's Freebird. I don't know it's Freebird. I don't know what the
Well,
product
sometimes
is.
you might know the product occasionally, but say for example, if we're doing competitive taste tests, we're doing Coke versus Pepsi, you're not going to know it's Coke versus Pepsi. You're going to have, sample 1, 2, 3 versus sample 7, 8, 9. And that's what a blind test is.
Yeah.
So
If we're doing a concept or we're testing various flavors or formulas, we can have some branding, some packaging, and be able to get some feedback on our surveys in regards to branding, messaging, packaging, and those kinds of things as well, in addition to the taste metrics.
I'm curious, and I'm blanking on his name. I want to say it's Oli Hovde, and I'm probably butchering that. He was based here in Minneapolis. I met him several years ago, and at the time he wanted to do something. I'm sure I'm butchering his pitch, but he wanted to do something in the vein of like an AG1, like a greens mix, right?
Mhm.
But targeted or focused towards, shouldn't they targeted, but focused toward for the benefit of kids, right?
Mhm.
And fast forward, like I said, it's probably been 3 years, 4 years or more. I'm on LinkedIn and I see a post from him, and the name sounds vaguely familiar. And he's gotten into like Sprouts or somewhere with these packets, these greens smoothie packets for kids, right?
Okay.
So the reason I bring that up is I'm sure the question gets asked, and maybe you have a hard line because you have to, and maybe you have a hard line because it's just too cumbersome, and maybe you don't have a hard line at all. But if folks are coming through and it is kids of 5 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 15, 16, how do you accurately and with confidence capture their feedback? Or do you?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Then that reminds me that I didn't answer your question about the kids. So I'm just saying when we're at a testing site, for example, when we're at the park, we'll have dog bowls out and we'll have coloring books for the kids so that the parents can take the survey while their kids are occupied. That's what I meant
Right.
by that. Okay.
Okay.
So, and then to Adam, to your point, if we're doing adult taste tests, and we probably have some little samples we can give to the kids, but we're not, if it's not part of the study, we're not going to
Uh-huh.
be serving them. But we do have locations where we do test kids and parents. For example, there's a gymnasium out in Whittier. It's basically for gymnastics. I used to be a gymnast, so it's one of those big gyms, with the styrofoam you can jump in and the trampolines and everything. But there are classes for all ages, from toddlers on up.
Sure.
So what we have there, what's great about that is that we have a captive audience of parents and grandparents.
Sure.
And so we can test the parents and grandparents and the kids at the same time. So that's where, and so this would be targeted for active kids,
Yep.
so the A1 greens would be a good uh
So
a
that's
good
how
product
you,
for that.
so some questions are coming in here, some statements. Jeff says the qualifying is super important. So how you qualify is you're going after active kids. That's something one, two. And then Heather, actually, I'm going to stream the question here. Our friend Heather, let's see what we show here. I may have missed this, but what stage of brand development is best to engage with the tastemakers?
Oh, that's a great question. When you're just getting started out, and you don't have the money to do testing, I always recommend. So, I mean, I'd say, maybe 2 million and up. I mean, you have a product, or, maybe even 1 million and up, or if you can scrape together 10 or $15,000 just to make sure, uh, then yeah, give us a call, because we can show you, we can let you know pretty precisely if the product or products are market ready, if there's consumer acceptance, and if the product is optimized.
Would you talk? So Heather, she says we are in the formulation phase at the moment. So Adam deals with a lot of people in the formulation phase at the moment. I would think that they want to talk to you because here's what I experienced. I was over at Earl Giles, our friends over there, Adam, but I actually got to participate or observe. They bring in these people, right? And they'll take them through they're looking for a certain flavor. But I think it'd be more interesting is it doesn't matter what I think. It matters
Right.
what the consumer you're targeting
Exactly.
thinks. So I
So
think
that's
I think they should employ your services. Sorry, but I need to connect you up with Earl Giles, and you need to be part of that to talk to their consumers in there to let the consumers say what are they looking for.
Yeah, and it's a chicken and egg thing, right? So, you might not have the money to test until after you get the product in the market, or does it make sense to test first to make sure that your product is successful once it gets in the markets? So I think, to your point, you're right. It's really a matter of, when you're thinking about your product and you want to know if other people will like or buy your product, in addition to my kids and my neighbors and my accounting person, right? So that's when you want to give us a call.
Got it. Got it. So back to the question, and maybe Adam, you can help expand on this, but I'm early in the formulation stage. I don't know if you really answered. Would you want to talk to those people? Can you help those folks?
Well, and with that, if you guys can hear me, I don't know if I'm frozen.
Yeah, yeah, you're good. Yeah,
Okay.
we hear you.
And with that is a question I was kind of hinting at before we went live. If they're in that early stage and maybe they don't even know, like they wouldn't even be able to set the parameters for you to take effective action on their behalf and provide value, right? Like they're
Right.
total blue sky brand. They're like, I need just some insight. Is that something that you or a member of your team can help with, just in terms of like an hour
Absolutely.
long phone call to say, hey, in the better for you space, here's what we're seeing. And we'll charge you for that insight and then let you do with it what you will. Like, is that an option?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an option. So a couple things there. A lot of times when it's really bootstrap and there just isn't enough money for, proper consumer product testing study, then I say, hey, hit the streets. That's how we started, right? That's how Tastemakers started. Have a block party, go to your soccer, test it out at your kid's
Oh,
soccer game.
Sure.
Just do those types of things. And then, you know,
well, it's funny you
and I'll
said
I'll
that.
even
Hit
help
the
them.
streets and go to the block parties and stuff. So I met this gentleman called Bertito Beverage, which is Tito, or Tito actually made vodka infused vodka, and he took them to his friends, and his friends like this is really good. So what he ended up doing is actually created a distiller, and actually started distilling it and made his own product. So exactly what you're saying. Peter had a question a little while back. He said, I would assume there's some occasional pushback from a client about results that they may not have expected. How do you navigate those waters?
That's a really good question. And I've learned some things about that because, you know, I mean, sometimes these products are babies, right? So no one wants to hear they have an ugly baby. And so in a sense, I can let the numbers speak for themselves. So the way that we do our reporting is pretty direct and straightforward. We don't have pages and pages of charts. We have tables and we look at side by side the key metrics for each question. Uh, and we do, okay, well, this product A was significantly preferred to product B. They can't really argue with that, right? They can say, well, did you recruit the right people? And we can say, well, we recruited the people that use your product, would potentially buy your product and currently use other competitive products. You know, so we cover our bases and we do always, of course, want to make sure that we are targeting the right consumer for them.
Well,
So is that did that
that
answer that question?
answers the questions for sure. So let's pivot back to Venice Beach. We were talking about this last night and a little bit before we went live.
Yeah.
Tell us this, like any like interesting stories you can share when you're out there in the wild talking to the consumer.
Sure.
That's the first question. Like any interesting stories you just want to share in terms of this, what happens when that you want to share.
Okay, yeah, sure. Just before I forget, we also do alcohol taste tests. We have some partnerships with some very, very cool, awesome establishments in Hollywood and around Los Angeles, and we'll rent a room and we'll recruit off the street and the patrons. So anyway, we can get there. So yeah, Venice Beach is always very interesting. We don't do Venice Beach very often because it's difficult, right? So because we have to set up everything at 6 or 7 in the morning, and then we have to tear down everything at 6 or 7 at night, and then do it again the next morning.
Oh, they don't let you leave it up. You have to build.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely a physical element here as well. So Venice Beach is always interesting, right? So we definitely in most cases, we just want to make sure that everybody has, uh, teeth and, you know, uh, does not reek of alcohol and are not high as a kite. So, we always have to contend with that. But, what we do is we just offer them free samples and just,
So
and
you
I
have
have
to like, hey, you can have the dog biscuit, but I'm not going to talk to you.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just say, I'm sorry, and we have to do that all the time, right? Because not anyone and everyone can take taste tests, whether or not they're homeless or not, right? So basically we just, yeah, I generally have a security person or someone that handles that, and we just
What's the
kind of
funniest
walk them out.
encounter
So,
you had with an individual or a person that you can share here? That's something that inevitably just happened, and you think about it all the time. I'm sure something sparked in your brain, or like you
that
met a celebrity or something that happened.
yeah. We get the occasional celebrity, so I'm not in the field as much as I used to be, but yeah, we'll get the occasional celebrity, and again, living in Los Angeles, you kind of see them all the time, so and
They
talking
magically
A-lister.
appear. I lived in LA too, and I was driving down the road, and I drove by Ted Danson, and then later
Yep,
on, Whoopi Goldberg. I'm in the airport, and it's like they're just right there, right in front of you, which is amazing.
yeah. And I'm not talking about A-list celebrities, right? I'm talking about B and C-list celebrities. Uh Pauly Shore and uh what Mindy Kaling, some reality stars who, I don't really know, but, my
All right,
staff was like, "Oh,
so
that's so and so from
so
what."
Heather came on and said Kathy Griffin, lots of love.
Aw.
So back. So let's get back to the spirits thing. But I'd be remiss if I didn't answer one of Heather's questions. So she's
Yes.
a big in the no low space, no alcohol, low alcohol. Are you
Yeah.
in that space? You want to tell a little bit about that?
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. So again, this I believe I don't know if she'd agree, but I would say this is a BFY product, falls into sort of that better for you type of product in that, it's better for you than alcohol. And a lot of them do have, supplements or adaptogens or things like that that, help you feel or more at ease. So yes, that's a huge thing, and we do test with some of those brands, and we test here in Los Angeles. We can test elsewhere too, but yeah, that would be a fantastic. That
What makes it test? What makes a test viable? I don't know if this is the right word, viable. Like how many people that to say if you have to extrapolate across the U.S., how many people you have to test to say, hey, this is statistically relevant?
Well, that's a great question. And if you don't mind me nerding out for a second, I'll give you my little spiel on sample sizes. So, first of all, the pop-up CLT is a quantitative method. Okay. Qualitative, for example, are focus groups. And I would never recommend doing taste tests or trying to get answers on whether or not to launch formulas or not, flavors or not, by doing a focus group. So, the minimum sample size for quantitative taste test is 50. Okay. And that's the minimum you want to do. Now, I like 100. It's a nice round number. If you say 66% prefer, product A, that's significant. 66% equals 66 people. So it's just easy to understand. Larger companies, or bigger legacy companies, they usually like a sample size of 150 now or more. Now, this would just be for one test, right? So for example, if you wanted to do 3 or 4 tests or 3 or 4 different flavors or, competitive taste tests where there's, two or more flavors, although I would stick to two for many reasons, then then you would need more tests, and of course that costs more money. So that's why if there's a small company and they want to do 2 or 3 tests, and we could do a sample size of 50, whereas a larger company would probably use a sample size of 150 or more. But we can get away with 50, and you can get away with 50. And I'm okay saying that, even though market research
Okay.
people won't tell
Okay.
you that.
And then you can take those numbers and then they can make some decisions based on that
Yeah,
data that you provide. I want to go
exactly.
back to the alcohol beverage business and actually sensory testing. And Adam will appreciate this. And I'll let Adam take the next question. But you do targeted sensory panels.
Targeted.
Sensory.
Oh, sensory panels. Right.
Sorry.
So
How does that work?
So that's basically what our pop-up CLT is.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that honestly, that's really more for my search engine optimization, because people in market research, they call they call everything something different than what everyone else calls things. So we call them taste tests, right?
Yeah.
And the market research people call them consumer sensory panels. So
Okay.
I have that in there so that it catches in my search engine optimization phrasing so that I get inquiries from those clients. But that's what it is. And that's what we do. So we have a BFY, better for you sensory panel, that's testing your products. Health and wellness enthusiasts, for example, is a consumer sensory panel that we're targeting for these taste tests.
Well, I would think I would, as a founder or a brand owner or a marketer that's responsible for the quality of my product, I would think that I want to invest in you before I make my product, because if I'm going to make a big bet, I better make sure that it actually hits the consumer. And Adam, how many people do you talk to? They just come up with the product based on like 2 or 3 people's opinion and they come out with it. And then inevitably it rolls out into the world and people go, this doesn't taste right. Or is it, I guess there's something between what you do, Adam, in terms of helping brands, come to market, and then what Andy's doing to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful segue for me, Sam, because it leads into the question that I've been wanting to ask. I think, I literally wrote something in a document I was putting together the other day that said if your product is for everyone, it's for no one, right? like I'm not saying that you have to find, the 300 person niche of some super unique hobby, but like you have to pick a lane to some degree, right? Um, and so Andrea, the question that extends from that is, and Sam's heard me say it before, and I might have mentioned on the call with you, I call it the give a mouse a cookie paradox, and it happens to me, and I know this happens to you, so I'm curious to see what your answer is. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to engage with you. I want to get this research done. You provide them the research of, hey, 66% of participants felt this way or said this thing. I'm making something up. But then, Brandon responds and goes, well, okay, they said, 66% said that they were off put by this artwork on the can. Help me, like, can you help me redesign it? And if not, who does? Who do you recommend? So how do you carry that conversation forward into helping them either paint a larger picture within Tastemakers and figure out what kind of reformulating, redesigning, tweaking looks like, or who do you send them to?
Okay, well, I mean, well, first and foremost, anyone can contact me for anything market research related. Now, in terms of packaging, I certainly have some contacts I would be happy to flip your way that are, that are very experienced, excellent boutique
Yeah, and we'll
firms,
make
I
sure
would
that
say.
we when we actually publish the podcast, we'll put like contact information in handy so they can get in touch with you. For sure. This is something that, it's funny. I shared with you when we first met, like when I lived in Los Angeles, I would be intercepted, right? And I get intercepted a couple ways. One is I'd be in the mall and they'd give me a free movie pass. So it was like really big out there. I don't know if they do that now, but they're like, hey, go watch this movie. And
Right,
they paid me to go to see it. And
right.
so Susan and I would actually venture out in the wild. Hey, let's go get free movie passes today because we knew where these people were to give us free movie passes. This
Uh-huh.
is when we're in our 20s and we had no money. So we were trying to get the
Right.
$5 dog bone for free. So,
Yeah, they still do that. They still do that. But yeah, and it works for that product, for the movie product.
right.
So, but yeah, these are all
Have you
excellent.
thought about like, so I know you talked about like the canyon, kids soccer games, you'll go to Venice Beach. I mean, is there a particular area, maybe you said at the very beginning, but is there a particular location or a time of day that is actually really to optimize the opportunity to get people interested in you, or day of the week to actually talk?
It depends on the location. I mean, another thing that we do is I work with, commercial retail property managers. So those are the types of companies that have owned malls or possibly own malls, but they have retail centers nationally. So, but again, like I said, we're not the mall people and we're not the clipboard people, but what we'll do is we'll test at either an everyday retail location or which, you have your CVS, you have your Petco, you have your Chase Bank and a Starbucks. And so there's generally what we do is a short-term lease. It's also called a pop-up.
Okay.
And so we'll be there for 2 or 3 days or a week or how long we need to complete the project. And then we're allowed to recruit people that are in and out all day,
I mean, you bring
thousands
them
of
in,
people
they
in and
get
out
on the
all day.
computer, they answer the
Exactly,
questions,
exactly. And so
the whole bit.
then they have those on the national level. So then we can use, those locations in different markets as well. So when we do have different markets, then we usually work with one of those commercial property
So tell me
managers.
about, I'm going to pronounce Neuro Bliss. So they have some great things to say about you and about how you did their sensory panels and they contact you and they're really excited what you do. And looks like a really cool brand, Adam. I don't know if you see on the website, but this is something, these are brands like Adam would be working with, by the way, early stage. They want to come in and develop, but tell us about this
Yeah,
relationship.
absolutely. So Neuro's been around for a while. I would say that they are one of the first
As I say,
BFY functional
they
beverages.
used to have the PET, like the hourglass PET bottles, right? With the twist off cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that they still do, if
I'm
I'm not
looking right
mistaken.
at one right now on her website.
Yeah, but that I'm pretty sure that they still do. So yeah, that was we tested in Los Angeles and New York with those. And I work with their head of research, tech and technical. And yeah, we've done some great work for them. testing various formulas, testing different flavors, testing, this kind of gets it. We didn't test efficacy with them, but we are now testing efficacy of these functional beverages. So that's, do you now feel energized? Do you now feel relaxed? Or, those kinds of things.
So this is going to be in a world that Adam's probably going to get really technical on you. So you can prove based on the consumer response that it's efficacious.
Yeah, so these aren't clinical trials.
Yeah,
Again,
got it. I
clinical
know.
trials are basically cost prohibitive for
Right, but you can say
most
like it's
companies out there.
when you're talking about THC products, right? I was talking to a guy the other day, and he goes, "You don't really know." So actually, the gentleman I just introduced you to, he's like the flavor guy, Adam, the other day, Michael. But anyway, he was talking about you really don't know what's in the product, and a lot of stuff isn't water soluble. And I actually talked to the guy earlier in the week that actually has a technology that actually can make things water soluble. So, but based on their response, you can probably relatively assume that it's not obviously a clinical trial that it have some type of effect.
Yes. And I think one thing I also wanted to say is for our testing, and this is going to lead back into, does this work or not, is whether or not you can claim that. Okay, whether or not you can make a claim with that. So as long as you keep it B2B or business to business, so that means distributors, grocers, your sales team and marketing team, then you can say our product was preferred over the leading competitor, when you're fighting for shelf space and that kind of thing.
Okay, you got
As
it.
long as you don't cross over into consumer advertising with that message, because that's a whole different ball of wax. These standards were developed in the 80s by companies like General Mills and Kellogg's when there were no other smaller companies around. So these projects cost a minimum of 150,000 or more just to get this information. No matter how well you do the product, let's say you're going up against let's say you're a small company, you're going up against Coke or Pepsi, one of their BFY brands. Coke and Pepsi can sue you for sport just because how they dared
So,
to do
so,
that,
so
right?
I was thinking about the Freebird Liquid Death Challenge, Jay Williams. Can
I
we
love
do
liquid
that?
death.
Can we do it? Uh, all right.
Yeah,
So can we do that with you? Like it's not my decision, but Jay, but could
yeah.
we do
We tested liquid death, not as a client, but as a competitor.
really? So how did that go? So
Well,
was it,
it was with their iced tea brand.
and Jay said they would get murdered. So anyway, I'll connect you up with Jay Williams, but go ahead. So you tested
Oh
their ice.
yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. They have some iced teas, low sugar iced teas. I'm actually a big fan of Liquid Death myself. So yeah, so that's what you can do. So when you're a smaller company, you don't really, first of all, you don't have the money to do the consumer ad claims, right? Because you have to anyway. It's a whole thing, minimum 150,000. But what we can do is we can get you B2B claims. So that you can tell your
Distributor.
distributors and your
Yeah,
grocers.
right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And say, look,
Because what we do at Bev Assets is we actually help find distributors and customers, right? I was sitting at
right.
Walmart, not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before last. And I want to be able to take that information, to them or to Breakthrough or Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits and Ebony. You're going to say, hey, what does the brand taste like? What does the brand stand for? Who is your competitor? And I've had some information from you to actually build that to talk about my brand and I'm pitching to those people. That's helpful. So from a B2B standpoint, is the point is that information you're gathering, we can use that way.
Yeah. So there's your ROI on your cost when you're using Tastemakers Research Group. Because you're going to have this information that you can use to either get you in the door or get you more shelf space compared to your competitor.
Interesting. Adam, questions you're thinking there? I see you looking up.
Yeah, I had it, and then you kicked it over to me, and now I lost it.
Same.
Right?
Early. It's
Damn it.
still
Nope, I
pretty
was
early
literally
out here.
come back to me.
So what's next for Tastemakers? So you obviously you do the consumer research, you do the pop-up CLT, product testing solutions. Are you innovating? And is there innovation coming in terms of how you're approaching the consumer? What's in the future for you?
We've got a pretty good system. We've got a pretty good setup. Basically, our customers are any CPG, food and beverage company. I, for one, have not gone fast and broken things with the way I've approached my business. So it's just been kind of slow and steady. And let's not break things on purpose. Right. But I certainly have broken things, and,
I can go down a whole
we
rabbit hole
learn
about
from
breaking
them.
things on purpose, by the way, but I won't go down that right now. I'm just saying I'm looking at my 401k and why do we break it on purpose?
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I've been, it's been a slow and steady approach, and that's been, so it's been good for us to scale. And then, just speaking of scaling, I think, for example, I'm just going to throw out some pricing. Just don't hold me
Yeah,
to
I
it.
was going to
But
ask you,
for
what does it
example,
cost? Because
yeah,
what's it going to cost me? Because Jay Williams is asking right now at
so
Freebird, what is it going to cost me to get into the game here?
okay, so let's take a standard 100, n equals 100 uh
100
taste
people,
test.
100
100
tasters.
people. Okay. And so that would typically be priced about 15,000. So
Okay,
what that comes out to, and that includes our snapshot reporting, all our diagnosis, our stat tested reporting that we would use for B2B claims, essentially. So that's included in addition to live results links on testing days. So if you can't make it out to the testing site, you have a live results link. You can see the results as they come in. And that also includes individual participant incentives, because those are usually, other methods, it's $50 just to get them into the door. And ours are, between five and 10. So the best thing to do is, if we have smaller companies, is to pull them together so that we can do more than once. So let's say we have, uh, you know, let's say we have another company and they do n equals 100. Okay, well, now it's maybe like 22,500 to do the two tests versus 30,000 for two individual tests, right?
okay,
Because we have to cover our nut. If if you do so, if we have to take a day or two, let's say 2 days to do 100, because I always have to have a backup, even though we can probably finish it in one day. We can't start, you know, uh, passing along costs to you until we make our nut, which is mostly our fixed costs up front. But after we reach that, then we can start reducing price. So let's say you had three baby brands, and it's 300. Well, now maybe it's 30,000 or 10,000 a pop
got it, got it.
versus
What's interesting, I would think
45,000.
if I was going to make the millions of dollars investment, because like I talked to a person, a founder, and they actually sold their house to actually build their brand, right?
Mhm.
So think about that for a minute. And that's probably the house sold for like $1 million. So they took all those proceeds from that house to go pursue their dream. Or you hear it all the time, Adam, friends and family put 2 million into this deal, right? So I would think spending $15,000 is a bargain, because if I'm going to make the investment, also I can use that data to go to the investors to say, hey, we got it right. This is statistically relevant. We know this is a sweet spot for this brand against this consumer in this market because of what Tastemakers told us. So for me, sometimes these people, they start to pinch pennies and they put all their money into things that don't create value. I would think that I always talk about this: quality, consistency, and authenticity. And the quality and consistency in what you do is so important in a brand. And if you don't hit it, you can sell it once, but if it doesn't taste good and it's not consistent, they're not coming back.
Right. And the other thing is, in addition to the tasting, like I was saying, we also can evaluate, different messaging options, importance of various benefits, so that, you can prioritize what to put on the package, or what message to use with your consumers. Just, which
Interesting.
one
So
sort of
you think
resonated.
the consumers are going to tell you exactly what you need. So you can ask, you can put those questions in. It's really interesting. I've met some other marketers, one's called Mod or whatever. And what they do is they'll actually ask consumers to tell them what, like they did one called Brawl Ball was like their use case, but basically they had the consumers design the art for a Brawl Ball, right? And then they gave them some type of reward for the design of the art. So you probably do the same thing with your research too. Ask consumers, hey, what would you like to see in the package design of this product? And then they sign waivers based on that. So basically, once they give that information to you, it becomes the property of that client.
Well, I mean, we can have all participants sign an NDA or
Yeah,
a confidentiality agreement
yeah,
if needed, but and it's also very safe with our method because, if you're doing an online survey,
yeah.
just, I mean, people can pull those images down, but they can't do that when we're there, monitoring.
Interesting. Okay. Well, look, with the last few minutes here, I want to give you an opportunity to share anything. Obviously, we want to talk about that you want to share with everybody here. I know you talked about alcohol. You do like across all like CPG, food and beverages. We'll put in how to get in contact with you. But is there anything that we missed this morning that you wanted to share with the group?
I have that nagging feeling in the back of my head that there is something. I know we all know that feeling.
It's early in
And I
Los Angeles. It's
can't,
early in California right now. If you think about it, you
yeah,
can
and
always come back to me.
yeah, no, I really love what I do and how we do things.
Yeah.
So the way we approach people, like I said, we're not the clipboard people. We just want to know their opinion and we want them to be honest. And that's something that we ask as a screener. Will you provide an honest evaluation? Going back to Adam's point is are they just going to say something just because they want this or they want to get paid? Well, we have a rigorous screening process to
Yeah.
ensure that. Our I would just say that we have such high engagement so basically I'll say, our surveys are 6 to 8 minutes. Some people will spend 15 to 20 people. It's not, sorry, minutes. Some people 15 to 20 minutes. It's not uncommon because they are, they're sipping and they're thinking and they're sipping and they're thinking and they're writing things. And we've got these, essays
Yeah.
about what they liked or what they didn't like. So it's just, again, it's not just the method, but it's the engagement. And,
Yeah.
when you're in a different environment, a more formal environment, or more sterile environment, you just don't get that the kind of output that we do from the
Well,
participants.
one of the things you said to me, if it's okay if I share this when we were talking, it was like a few weeks ago, but I remember you saying like you founded this company because you get to work when you want to work where you want to work. You're not a morning person, so you can get up and so thank you for joining us early this morning that we convinced you. But being a founder, like do you love what you do? Do you love this company? You've put everything into it. Have you been? How long has the company
Absolutely.
been around?
We were incorporated in 2014, but
Okay.
unofficially I started around 2010. Again, about the same time I was doing those, kids protein bar taste tests at the soccer games. So,
Well,
so, so yeah, I do love it.
yeah, you do. So it's inspiring to me because I've been an entrepreneur for 2 years. My partner, Alicia Vargo, has been doing it for 2 decades. First of all, I always ask every founder this: what is the difference between success and failure? Do you know the answer?
I think it's all up here. It's how you feel. I mean, I don't I feel like Tastemakers research is a success, whether or not any anyone else considers it a success is irrelevant, you know. And it's not that I'm a millionaire or anything like that, or it's even about that. But it is at the end of the day, it's about helping companies sell better products
Yeah, but
or
you said
sell
something
sell
really
more
interesting.
products.
Alicia's gonna appreciate this. You said it. It's all up here, right? It's a manifest it, right? So half the time, if you just believe it, you'll achieve it. I know that's I don't know who said that quote, but it's true. I always said
It
one of
is
the well,
true.
number one, and one of the other thing I hear is I'm sure, like you weren't a success overnight. I'm 100% sure that you weren't. but you stuck with it. So I always hear the answer is not giving up. So many people are on the cusp of success, and then they cash in and they give up. So, I mean, how long, at this, like, a 15 plus year journey you've been on, how long did it take you to actually, see that ROI?
You know, I would say that it's been pretty steady, right? I mean, I haven't had that sort of I don't know that word, meteoric growth,
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
Nor have I been looking for that necessarily. It's just been
Yeah.
slow and steady. And, we're at a point now where, like you said, was I think, Tastemakers is ready to take off. We've done all of our own research. We have a finished product.
Right.
We have a working machine, and that is going to help determine, your products,
Yeah.
I guess, potential for
I,
success.
I mean, but I'm between Adam and I, there's a lot of brands we obviously want to connect you to that I believe straight up you can help. Even the co-packers you deal with, probably introduce her to Ryan, Adam. I'm sure Ryan would love to talk to Andy as well, and Ann and Jody and many of our friends out there. Even Deborah Brenner. We're part of the diversified diversity and equity and inclusion program there, as well as Women on the Vine and Spirit. So I'd love to connect you up with them.
Excellent. That
Yeah,
would
I think
that
you
would
would.
be awesome.
Yeah, I think you would enjoy meeting with Deborah, and it's also my partner Alicia. With that being said, I'm going to let Adam have some closing comments. Then you have some closing comments, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think the I remember the question I was going to ask, and we've run out of time, but I'll make it a statement, and Andrea, you can or Andy, you can agree with me or disagree. Um, the question was going to be, something around obviously taking the data that your group helps uh, capture and making sure that you work with an experienced legal team to understand ways to say it and not say it so that it is appropriately used, right? I'm sure we could run down that rabbit hole for another several minutes, but I asked because on this podcast and outside of it, Sam and I know a few attorneys who exist primarily in that space. And I'm assuming that's something that you either recommend or that folks who are informed will do for that exact reason.
Not necessarily. I mean, yes, you can, but here's the thing. I'm on the American Standards Testing Materials Committee for sensory ad claim substantiation for consumers. So what I've been able to do is I've been able to, well, first of all, this is cost ineffective for most of my clients.
Mhm.
Secondly, you can be sued for, so how do we do this in a B2,
Mhm.
how do we do claims from a B2B claim, B2, B2B way? So I've been able to find sort of the gray area and the loopholes where we can go right up until consumer advertising. So for example, I've worked with some companies and or separately their PR firms. So if there's hey, this was definitely preferred in these areas to the leading competitor, you can put a press release out about it because this is not consumer advertising, right? So there are ways that you can do that. But of course, if you're big enough to have sort of that lawyer, but just from me
Right.
knowing the standards
Yeah.
better than the lawyer's going to know them
That's
and
really
understand
that's
them.
really great information. So you did
Totally.
answer the question, which is really good. But that some part of another brand, a company called Wendy, which stands for We're Not Dead Yet Incorporated. But it's a bunch of people. But we have brands, and we always talk about things being efficacious. But maybe there's certain claims we can make from a B2B standpoint as we're going to try to
Yes.
open up distribution. So food for
Right.
thought. Wayne Latomsky, Bob Murray, and calling those people out, and Alan Copeland and others. With that being said, what kind of closing comments would you like to share with everybody, Andy, today?
I guess I would. So I do have one example. And this was from a while ago. We had a client, just again, kind of their own product that they had developed as sort of a savory trail mix. Didn't have the raisins or the chocolates in it. So we were testing the savory trail mix. And speaking of ugly babies, the vast majority of the participants thought that it looked like dog food and that they wouldn't buy it. So that was particularly useful so that they could go back and just, change because I think all the sizes were the same,
Yeah.
all the sizes were kind of the same, or sorry, all the pieces were the same sizes. So it just looked very homogeneous and there's a lot of brown in it. So based on that information, it was very clear what they needed to do is to make it not look like dog food.
Wow, it's interesting. I just
Super
had
interesting.
this thought for some reason. I'm gonna go try my dog's dog food now. I'm curious what it tastes like. Well, it's been great to have you here today. Thank you for sharing your journey. It took us a while
Thank
because
you.
it's several weeks ago that we talked. I'm glad we talked last night and this morning. I'm
Yeah,
wishing you the best of luck. I can't wait to get out to. Are you in the Los Angeles area? Yeah. So when I get out there, I'd love to meet you. And I know you know a couple of our friends out there, Marshall, as well as I think you know Roger as well. You guys run in the same circles. They
exactly.
said I can't join the group unless I'm physically in Los Angeles. So I'm going to come and maybe just be a guest speaker at the group and bring Adam and tote with me so we can do that. But thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And then I just wanted to screen this from Jeff in closing. He said, great info on testing products and collecting data. Thanks, Andy, Adam, and Sam. And thank you, Jeff, for joining us. And I'll connect you too as well. He's from Antarctica, and I'm sure that you could probably help many of his clients as well.
I'd be happy to. That's what we do and that's what we love doing. And next time you're in LA, my town, my treat, okay?
100%. I'm booking a ticket right now and I'm heading that way.
Awesome.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Alicia, Jeff, Peter, Mason, Heather, and others that have joined us today. Thanks for the participation. Just makes the show that much more special on a Saturday morning. Have a good weekend, everybody.